So hi everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I was supposed to be there personally, but my child got sick, so I had to stay back in southern Finland. We have heard a lot of interesting presentations about the Bothnia Bay today, and the previous presentation already looked into the future, and I will do the same thing, but on a little bit a different scale. So my name is Roosa Mikkola, and I work for Parks and Wildlife Finland on a project called eConnect. And what we try to find out is how the sea will look like in 2120. The project is an Interreg Bothnia Atlantica project, and you can see our project area here on the map. And we are 4 partners, of which Parks and Wildlife Finland, Metsähallitus, is the lead partner. And what we try to do is to visualize the underwater changes that climate change might bring for our project area, but also we are looking in a little bit a bigger scale on the whole Gulf of Bothnia on changes that might happen. And to enable sustainable management of the seas, scenarios of future conditions are needed, and we will produce maps showing distribution of HELCOM underwater biotopes in different RCP scenarios for 4.5 and 8.5. And we will also analyze how these changes will affect the ecosystem services that are produced in the area, as well as investigate the connectivity of our protected areas. So where are we right now? I borrowed this graph from the IPCC report, and we can see here a time period of approximately 150 years. And we can recognize several tendencies during this time. The land and sea surface temperature has increased within the period, and the Arctic summer ice coverage has decreased. And historically seen, the planet has always gone through warmer and colder periods, but when we look at historical carbon dioxide emissions, we can see that the emission amount right now is far beyond any normal anomaly. This is probably clear for everybody, but we can take a look from our Gulf of Bothnia perspective on this. The changes in the conditions shown in the previous slide are obvious, especially this winter. Essi already talked about it a little bit in the morning, telling that there is very little sea ice, if any, in the area. And as seen in the picture, we have less snow and sea ice, as said, and more rainfall and temperatures are above what we consider normal until now. You can see here on the right side a picture that I borrowed from the Finnish Meteorological Institute showing the ice coverage on Tuesday for the Gulf of Bothnia. The gray areas show the ice coverage, and the different shades of blue show the sea surface temperature. And this picture from Tuesday is compared with the normal situation showing here on the right side of the picture saying normaalitilanne on the 21st of February. So normally almost the whole Gulf of Bothnia would have an ice coverage, but that is not the situation right now. So how can we then predict the biological future? Elina already told some about how we do species modeling maps, and that is what we have already done in different projects. And we will use that data together with scenarios for the future with different light, salinity, and temperature conditions, and applies those to the species and biotope distributions, creating new distributions map showing how the future might look like. And I have an example here on the next slide after this one. Here is actually the same picture that Elin already showed a little bit earlier, but I will concentrate here on those small maps demonstrating the Gulf of Bothnia. These show different RCP 4.5 models. And so the RCP 4.5 consists of 4 different models, and you can see that there are different outcomes. In the upper layer, you can see 4 different models showing 4 different temperatures for June 2018, and the same models showing mean temperatures for June 2059. And you can see that they differ from each other. And what we will do is that we will take a mean of these different models and put that on our species biotope models and see what happens. So here is the example I told you about. We have not yet done this with the whole different scenarios. Here we have only used salinity, but what we see on this map right now is the Kvarken area, and we have modeled here different suitable areas for focus existence. The darker the area is, the more highly suitable the area for focus can be. And now if we look into the future, and we will decrease the salinity by 1.5 per mil, we will get a different kind of map, which shows that we have a decline of 52% of suitable areas for the biotope of focus. So this is one probable scenario that can happen in the future. And when the area of one biotope decreases, it also decreases the ecosystem services that are provided via this habitat. And here we have some focus from the Swedish side of our project area. So it could be that in the future we will have much less of bladder wrack, which is also a keystone species for the Baltic Sea. Here we can see now the project area and CGIS maps with different HELCOM underwater biotopes modeled for the whole area. So we will put the scenarios on these maps, and then we can calculate the change in the areal distribution of the biotopes and use those to assess the ecosystem services provided from this area. And that we will do by using a tool called the Marine Ecosystem Assessment tool. And this tool, MESAT, it's based on sizes with different indicators for each ecosystem service. You can see the different ecosystem services listed here on the slide. And behind each service, we can have multiple indicators. And the indicators such as filtration will then be connected with the biotope and different nature types that provide this service. And then by calculating the areal change in the biotopes, the indicator value will change, and we will get a scenario for the future ecosystem services provided by that biotope. And the results can, for example, be shown as in the circle at the bottom of this slide. The blue circle in the middle shows the initial status of the service, and the black dots show the changes that have happened then during the time. So in this example, we can see that the provisioning services have increased in our pilot area, whereas the cultural and regulating and maintenance services have decreased. One important aspect to think of with climate change is connectivity. And for the resilience of species and biotopes, connectivity is of large importance. Not only habitats affect connectivity, but also temperature and salinity can be major barriers in the future affecting connectivity. And in a review that was published 2019, showed that almost 800 examined marine protected areas, or of these 800 examined areas, only 11 considered connectivity as a criterion for making this MPA area. And in this picture is demonstrated the species in Swedish waters, and we can see the dispersal distance of different macrophytes, fish, and vertebrates. And you can see that the dispersal range of macrophytes is around 1 kilometer, whereas for several fish species, it's about 5 kilometers. And keeping that in mind, in the next slide that you can now see, we have marine protected areas in the Gulf of Bothnia. And all the red colored areas show areas with gaps between marine protected areas. So these are areas that have no connectivity with each other, meaning that from a macrophyte perspective, these are bad connected with each other. And if we look at an MPA network with a little bit of bigger dispersal with 10 kilometers, we can see that the MPAs on the Finnish side of the Gulf of Bothnia seem to have a better connectivity, whereas on the Swedish side, we can see quite a lot and quite big gaps between these marine protected areas. We have also tried different kind of connectivity analysis and tools, and this is a circuitscape analysis which models species movement and gene flow across different landscapes. You can see the black boxes in the pictures. So we have tested how the movement and gene flow functions in a north to south and west to east direction between these black dots. And the red color indicates a strong flow between different areas. And the lighter the color, the smaller the flow is. And in these maps, we have actually used depth as a barrier for connectivity. And this just shows a glimpse of how connectivity can function in our area. And as conclusions, as also Elin already mentioned earlier, scenarios are only predictions of possible futures, and we don't have a crystal ball. We can't actually know precisely what will happen. But to be able to sustainably manage our seas, we need to consider possible outcomes, and we need to know what might be coming. And the magnitude of the change in our area is unsure, but it can also, of course, be seen as a positive or negative change depending on from which side you are looking on. Thank you for listening. This was my presentation.